Hello Summoners and welcome to our very first ProGuides OP pick of the patch. My name is Christoph and today we're going to be talking about URGOT Jungle, which is a new pick that has taken the Rift by storm. With experienced players flaunting a 56% win rate, there's no question we need to talk about this champion. I'll go over all the details including his strengths, weaknesses, and everything you need to know to play him. Let us know down below if you like or dislike these kinds of videos and if you want to see more of these in the future. But there's a lot to cover, so let's get right into it. While we talked briefly about URGOT's strengths in the jungle in our 9.6 mid-patch analysis video, let's go into more depth into the topics we discussed there. With the changes made in patch 9.6, URGOT's passive no longer has reduced damage when hitting the same target multiple times. This not only speeds up his jungle clear, but has also increased his dueling potential against other junglers. These changes combined with the Conqueror rune gives us a well-rounded pick with great clear speed, good gank potential, and superb dueling strength. In spite of some of the nerfs in 9.7, we still think URGOT will be a reasonably strong pick and will hold a solid stance in the meta. First of all, let's talk about URGOT's strengths. Another change to URGOT in 9.6 was that his Purge had its cooldown decreased significantly with level, becoming a toggle when it was maxed. When he hits level 9, he's able to mow through the jungle, and along with his passive changes, he now has a good clear in the early game and an excellent one in the mid to late game. URGOT's strongest strength is his dueling potential and damage output. Catching out an opponent with disdain means that they'll have to eat several passive autos and a fully stacked Conqueror within a second. Now, let's talk about his weaknesses. One of the things you need to consider when playing URGOT in the jungle is a deceptive learning curve. He's not a hard champion, but he is far from an easy one. Essentially, he has 3 non-targeted abilities and his Q isn't a linear skill shot either, so it will take some practice to get it down. Currently, URGOT has a 49% win rate, but before you ask how a champion can be below a 50% win rate and still be OP, let me give you one more piece of data. Currently, URGOT players with over 100 games display an absurd win rate of 56%. This doesn't mean you have to play 100 games of URGOT because it's simply a trend, and players with experience much less than 100 games are still finding high success on him. But make sure when you do pick URGOT that you take him through some normal games first to get some practice on him. Another weakness of URGOT is his low range on his dash. In comparison to champions like Lee Sin, Jarvan, and Elise who can traverse nearly a full screen's worth when ganking, URGOT's low range dash means that his ganks can be harder to execute against players who are playing safe. As a result, your best bet is to either counter gank or gank side lanes that are pushed up too far. On the flip side, the low range also means that getting caught out as URGOT leaves little chance for survival. Players have to be very careful not to go too deep in the early stages of the game with URGOT. Another weakness to URGOT is that he is kiteable. URGOT's Purge targets champions if they've been hit by abilities. If you are fighting him as a team, this means that if you can dodge his Q, you can use all your allies to split his damage since he can't choose a direct target. When you play versus URGOT, make sure you keep his low range and mobility in mind. If you want to contest Crab versus URGOT, make sure you check bushes carefully. By dodging his E, you can kite him if you are a ranged champion and push him off of it. If you are playing a melee champion, you can possibly win by fighting him after he's used his passive on the Crab and jumping on him afterward. Be careful when you do decide to fight him and think carefully about if you can win or not. Don't be afraid if you have a red buff advantage over him and he's used several arms of his passive already. Building a Skirmisher Saber can be helpful since he is not a very mobile champion, and the combat advantage can be enough to turn a fight, especially if you can flash to avoid his ultimate. Next is how to play URGOT. First up is runes. Conqueror is an absolute must for jungle URGOT. There is no alternative. It provides AD, true damage, and sustain, which are all good for URGOT, so make sure you run it every game you take him in the jungle. You can take either Triumph or Presence of Mind. Triumph will be better for team fighting and skirmishing throughout the game, but Presence of Mind will give you more opportunities to look for ganks after 6. Also take Legend Tenacity versus teams with any form of crowd control, and take Legend Bloodline against any teams with no crowd control, followed by Coup de Grace. You want to take Magical Footwear and Approach Velocity in the Inspiration trees because movement speed synergizes well with URGOT. It allows him to close the gap and make it easier to land Disdain, and being faster than your opponent lets you maneuver around them to get more passive procs off. For builds, start the game with Hunter's Machete and Refillable Potion. You want to rush Warrior on either Skirmishing Saber or Stalker's Blade. We recommend Stalker's Blade because it's never a bad choice. It'll let you catch up to your opponents and make your abilities easier to land. but Skirmishing Saber can help you kill tanks and have stronger 1v1s if you're looking to play more aggressively and fight the opposing jungler. Follow up your build with a Black Cleaver. From there, you can build more aggressively with items like Death's Dance, Righteous Glory, Guardian Angel, and Frozen Mallet, or defensively with Adaptive Helm, Randuin's Omen, and Gargoyle Stoneplate. Start with W, at level 2 take E, and at level 3 take Q. Afterwards, you should prioritize R, W, Q, E. Finally, let's go over some tips on playing Urgot in the jungle. Starting the game out, you should look to start a buff and then take an adjacent camp. Krugs if you started red, or Grump if you started blue. From there, you can path to Scuttle Crab and look for a gank or continue to clear your jungle out. Remember that on your first clear, you'll have a very easy time clearing solo camps, but the camps with multiple mobs will be a bit harder because you're starting with a machete. Especially if you're starting blue, know that your clear time for your first 2 camps will be fast relative to other junglers. As a result, you can usually be the first to reach Scuttle Crab and might be able to sneak it even without lane priority. Against other junglers who clear 2 camps very quickly, make sure to be aware of the state of your teammates' lanes and consider whether or not you can win a fight. Your single target speed is one of the fastest, so make sure to take advantage of this throughout the game by using it to clear all neutral jungle monsters when you have the chances to. At all stages of the game, you can deal really good damage, so don't be afraid to initiate an early gank with an E plus flash combo. This increases the distance you can go with it and catch opponents off guard. Since you do so much damage, you can either chunk out an opponent, force a flash trade, or get a kill since you have so much kill threat. A lot of your hardest matchups in the jungle are going to be against champions that outrange you. However, you can still win fights if you catch someone off guard from a bush or fog. If you know where the enemy jungler is, try to predict their pathing and ambush them to force a flash or grab a kill. Another simple tip is that you can hold your abilities and just use Chilling Smite in order to get closer to enemies to get in range to use Purge. Once you get closer, enemies will have a harder time dodging your stun and might even make some poor movements trying to dodge your abilities. Let's talk about Urgot's ultimate. In most situations, you should try and hold onto your ult until after your stun to ensure that it lands. But if you have someone to set it up with some crowd control before you're in range, you don't have to be afraid to ult early since it will stick onto them for 4 seconds. Remember that not every ult has to lead to an execute. Sometimes just getting the slow to help your teammates catch up or stick onto your opponent will land a kill as well. During this time, your opponent will be slowed, so you won't have a problem catching up to him as long as you're running approach velocity and can kill your opponent without an ultimate execute when you get in range. Here are some pro habits from the Urgot one-trick ponies. One thing that a lot of pro players do when they play Urgot in the jungle is they are proactive and aggressively start Dragon or Rift Herald when they're even or ahead. Urgot has very strong clear on Dragon because his passive does % health damage. Another reason why they do this is because Urgot thrives in skirmishes, especially in choke points. You can look to stop doing Dragon and then look to fight when your ultimate is up. Getting an execute with your ult in the river or in choke points is optimal for Urgot, as this is when he's strongest. To help accomplish this, consider buying a lot of control wards to supplement your neutral objective aggression. Since Urgot doesn't have much mobility, it's easier to have his opponents walk into him so he can catch opponents by surprise and maximize his damage. If your opponents don't know how strong you are, you can use control wards to set up traps for your opponents and kill them when they come to clear vision. Otherwise, you can secure neutral objectives with your vision control. When fighting, a lot of pros also don't feel the need to dive straight into the enemy team. Instead, they'll usually just go for whatever damage is safest for them, only moving to dive an enemy team if they are pulling in a target for an execute. If you want a jungler who has strong pressure throughout the game, insane team fighting, and who has a lot of strength to dictate games, make sure to pick up Urgot Jungle. If you're interested in getting better at jungle, please check out ProGuides.com where you can watch Nightblue's jungle course, which will help you guys get so much better at jungle. Thanks so much for watching, good luck in your next games, and we'll see you guys on the Rift.